This is just a
Gentlemen, and welcome to Pistons Nation. Today, it's Aaron Johnson here, and talking with me tonight is going to be Chris Plate, our new member of Pistons Nation. Excited for you to be here, Chris. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you, Aaron?
I'm doing all right. So, Chris, we're going to talk about numerous things here tonight. 10:30 right now here in Michigan. So it's getting late, but there's still a lot of Pistons to talk about.
And welcome.
So let's get right into
Pistons
it.
Nation.
The Pistons have the 8th pick and the 38th pick in the NBA draft. And we've talked about this a lot
Our new
here at Pistons
member.
Nation, Chris. I'm going to start with the
I'm doing
8th pick
good.
in
How
the
are
draft.
you, Aaron? Ideally, I've been kind of sold Johnson. Highest ceiling. Warner's is still because of Darko. I still hold that out, but I actually wouldn't mind the center guy. I think he'd be all right, but I don't like this Mario guy that we're supposedly interested in. And I think that Stanley Johnson just offers more. He's more dimensional, and I think he's great. And I also would like Justice Winslow, but I don't think he's going to slip to us at 8. And then as far as the 38th pick, you're looking at maybe one of the Harrison twins, or Dakari Johnson is a nice center, because we do need that backup center for Andre Drummond for those 8 to 10 minutes that he's out per game.
Yeah, Chris, I'm definitely going with your first pick at the 8th. I really do like Stanley Justice Winslow and Frank Kaminsky. And another guy that I've started to really like his game is Bobby Portis out of Arkansas. And I'm going to talk about him for a moment here. I watched some of his tapes, and he's a very good power forward. He can play the center too. He can stretch the floor. He can play the stretch 4 role. He's not very strong, which is one of his downsides. He's definitely going to have to add some muscle. But playing alongside Andre Drummond, it should work greatly, because they're both very good defensive players. They're two good rim protectors. Portis can actually also play well in a switch pick and roll situation, where he can defend the perimeter player for however long the play goes on, until he can switch back to the guy in the paint, which is something I really like about him, because Andre, he can do that to an extent, but Portis, watching his draft tapes, you really could like him a lot with everything he can do. He's so versatile on the offensive end. He can run the fast break so well. He's not extremely athletic, but his game overall it's all around good. He's not someone that's going to take 5 years to develop, like a guy like someone else in the draft, someone like Jahlil Okafor, who's going to take a lot of tuning, but does have some of the highest upside in the draft. And Frank Kaminsky, you look at him, as much as I did, going to be able to do long term for the Pistons, and if he's going to be able to develop or not. Going to the international guys, Mario Hinoza and Christian Porzingis, again, I agree with you with, I think I'm afraid of the Darko Milicic happening. I'm kind of just there right now. I'd rather just stay away from them. Now, going to the 38th pick, I really do like Dakari Johnson, because we do need a backup center for Drummond. Dakari is a center. He played for Duke. He stands at 6'11", which is great size. He's a monster offensive rebounder, and he can do a little bit offensively in the post. And the only thing is, he only played 16 minutes a game, because he was backing up for Jahlil Okafor. So we didn't get to see a ton of him. Dakari, in 8 to 10, he could play just fine, and Anthony did, or maybe even another Carolina. He's a 6'7" wing. He can play the shooting guard or small forward. He's very athletic, and that's what a lot of people think is going to keep him in the league. It's because his athleticism is one of the best in the draft. He's very raw offensively, though, and his three-point shot is terrible. I believe he shot 8 out of 45 in his college career from beyond the arc. So offensively, he does need some tuning and a lot of work, which will take time, but under the right coaching of SVG and having guys like KCP and Jody Meeks to help him at the shooting guard spot and then small forward spot, whoever we sign in free agency or draft, Takoto can become a bit of a better offensive player. And I've heard that at the NBA Combine, he's had a few very impressive outings, which is good to hear because when players start to play well, when they have many scouts looking at them and it's the NBA draft's coming right around, that's when it's very important. Another thing you can like about him is he's a solid defensive player, perimeter defender. He can do what needs to be done off the bench, and could potentially, as he progresses through his career, be put in the final seconds for close game situations just because he's labeled as such a good perimeter defender.
I agree with everything you said as far as both picks. I like Stanley Johnson a lot. Going back to the 8th pick, I really hope he makes it. Denver might take him, but probably not. I think they're going to end up getting a Justice Winslow ahead of him. But I like Stanley Johnson just because I think he's got like all potential. He can stretch. He just seems athleticism and ability that he can.
Yeah, as the season talks, really, because he was maybe blessing in disguise for him as he could fall to Detroit, who's in a pretty good situation, and Johnson could come in and start basically without much competition.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to add to is you said you were shying away from Frank Kaminsky, but which is good because in my opinion, I don't like him, especially at 8, just because I think he's going to end up. He's a role caliber player. He's a scrawny dude. I mean, he's tough, but he's kind of scrawny, and he'll end up being essentially a spot up shooter. I don't know if he has the quickness and the defensive ability and all of that to hold his own as a starting 4. I see him as a role player at best. As his ceiling. I'm just not that high on him, so I'd much rather us, instead of Stan Van Gundy, falling in love with the shooters, which we know he loves and values. I just hope that he sees the full package that guys like Stanley Johnson are offering.
Definitely agree on that. Guys like Winslow and Johnson have a way higher ceiling.
Yeah.
All right, Chris, let's get into the next topic. A few days ago, Pistons star center Andre Drummond, he was losing about 20 weight, that it comes down to me and what I'm doing on the floor, and that if I'm not in the best condition, the best playing shape, I can't do nothing for my team. Chris, let me get your thoughts on what Andre said and how that's going to affect the Pistons this year.
Yeah, I mean, I like exactly what he said. It shows leadership. It shows desire to win, and that's important for a young guy. I mean, he's still just 21 years of age. I mean, he's got the whole world ahead of him in terms of potential and that will to win. And I think it's great for the Pistons. LeBron slimmed down this year, and that worked out great for him. And a lot of the players are starting to kind of slim down. And I think it'll end up helping him and prolonging his career in the long haul.
You know what? I agree with that, as I have agreed with basically everything you said here tonight.
Yeah, I know.
But someone was labeled as unmotivated and lazy going into the NBA draft back in 2000, whenever. I can't remember off the top of my head. But I think this kind of shows that he's very much so motivated. And while I wrote out a quick article today on this, some of the stuff I touched on was this conditioning is going to be games longer. And for your star, you'd like to see at least 36, I would say.
Yeah, I agree.
Also,
Drummond, go ahead. Sorry.
All right. Drummond also commits some lazy fouls, and those put him in foul. When you're more content to make those lazy fouls as to maybe where you just really need a break, but your coach doesn't want you to sit out because you're such a big part of the team, but you need a rest, and you just end up making a lazy foul out of either or just lack of energy. And he's going to be able to outrun other big men. And for Detroit, I think this year a big part of their offense is going to be fast break with faster guards like Reggie and Brandon, and then KCP, whoever they get in free agency, whether or the draft, whether it's a small forward or power forward. I really do think that their fast break offense is part of what they're going to be able to do. defensive end, Drummond's going to be able to size up a lot better just because he's not carrying the extra weight. He's going to be carrying more strength.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I think this is nothing but good news for Piston fans and for Drummond's career, the team, everything. I just, I think they should pace more. I thought last year was too slow. I believe they have a lot of athleticism with Jackson, Jennings, KCP, Drummond. Monroe wasn't the greatest athlete, but I thought he was pretty underrated in terms of his athletic ability. And so if we get a guy like Stanley Johnson and maybe even a Draymond Green in free agency, then you're looking at a team that can really run the floor and play high level intensity basketball.
And another thing is, this really shows that Drummond's looking to become a leader. And as he starts to escalate through the ranks of the NBA, he's going to be entering his fourth year. Leadership is key for star players because if you're not a leader, you're going to be successful. Of saying that you need to get better first in order for your team to get better, and that's what you really like about this situation.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think it's nothing but good news for Detroit.
Okay, so free agency is oh so close. It's coming up right after the draft on June 25th. Free agency starts July 1st. And Chris, who are some of your free agent targets for the Pistons?
All right, so I'll give you the ones first, and then I will actually have a shot at it. I'll start with the Draymond Green, the one that's rumored and we're heavily linked to, and I like him, but I'm not sure if we have to overpay for. I think we'll end up having to overpay for him, but I think he's all right. I think he's good, but I think also Curry and Clay in that system is making him better than what he is offensively. But I just love his fire and his defensive ability. So I think he'd be someone good to look at for the forward and for the power forward spot. And then assuming we get Stanley Johnson or some of, I'm assuming we're going small forward in the draft just because it seems that position is the most heavy around our selection area. So I think it's key that we bring Tolliver back. I think he was great for us last year. I think we should look into Paul Millsap as another stretch four who's available on the market. I don't know. I don't know if he's staying in Atlanta or if he's going to Mari Carroll, another Atlanta. He's a three, but he's just a great defender. He could really add some versatility to us. And I think the guy that we should go for and that I think we do have a shot is Kevin Love. I really think that if he opts out this summer and becomes a free agent, I think we should pursue him because Stan Van Gundy, you look at the system, I mean, Tolliver is a prime example last year. Look at Tolliver as a stretch four. I mean, he was playing fantastic for us and just knows how to make a system that really can really, and Kevin Love is that, and back to the basket guy like Andre Drummond. I think that's just a perfect complementary piece. And Kevin Love's also a great rebounder, and he's a great outlet passer, so he can get it to our Jennings, our Jackson, KCP, Stanley Johnson if we get him. Drummond, he can really do that outlet pass to really start the fast breaks. So I like him a lot, and I think we do have a shot just because we have an elite head coach, we have a franchise level player, and if we get Kevin Love, I think that throws us in the mix for not an Eastern Conference championship, but we'll at least be in that upper tier if we can get a guy like Kevin Love. So I think that there's some animosity in Cleveland, obviously, and different weather. So if they draft Karl Anthony Towns or Jahlil Okafor, then that basically is showing that the Lakers don't need a big man because they already have Julius Randle. So if that happens, I think Detroit can be a real prime sneaky destination for Kevin Love. What do you?
I have just because he's such a big name, and you don't hear many big name players interested in the Detroit Pistons. But you just convinced me that Kevin Love could catapult this team to a title contention. Because before he went to Cleveland and was the third option on the offensive end and getting blamed for every single mistake that came the Cavaliers' way, he was 20-plus points and 50 pounds a night guy. And if he can come here, if he can come to Detroit, play alongside Andre Drummond, a upcoming top point guard in Reggie Jackson, I think he puts us right up in title contention because he's the ultimate floor spacer. He can shoot the three ball so well, and he just does everything. And if we do end up losing Andre Drummond midseason to injury or something, and we have Tolliver, those two, I'd like to see those two work together because they both do stretch the floor, and it'd be interesting just to kind of see them and how that would play out. Love would be a perfect fit, and for the exact reasons you said, and Stan Van Gundy, who's going to be a top coach in this league for a while, Andre Drummond, who's a star, you got a front court and a back court that are starting to just come together. Reggie Jackson and KCP are starting to gain that chemistry together. KCP is getting better and better as the day goes by. I mean, I thought he was the most improved player of the year candidate after his scoring per game went up 7 points throughout the year. I'd love to see Kevin Love in Detroit.
Yeah, I think it is a hand in glove fit. Now, whether he realizes that or not is a totally different situation. But I think that we should really go for him because, like you said, our backcourt is young and upcoming. I mean, we got 3 really good young guards: Brandon Jennings, Reggie Jackson, and KCP. And I still think the world of KCP. I still think he's a star caliber, all-star caliber player because, I mean, he's just got the physical tools. If he can just get that jump shot more consistently, which we've seen is the easiest thing to improve on in the NBA, then he will be a good, if not great player. And Drummond obviously is getting better by the minute as well. So I think that we really should be a good destination for free agents. I think we should be an attractive destination because we aren't a small market team. We're a medium market team, and Detroit is, as bad as the rep it gets, it really is a great city. It is a great environment, and I do hear that a lot of the players that come here, they love it here. Like Brandon Jennings, I know he came over here from Milwaukee, and man, he's loved Detroit. He embraces it. He's always uploading pictures of just hanging around Detroit and enjoying it. So I think it really is a great city to be in, and I think Kevin Love would get along with these guys. And the reason why I didn't say title contention with Kevin Love just yet is because I think it's going to take a year or two for that core to really blossom. But yeah, if we get him, we're definitely a contender within the next year or two.
Right, and when you say that, that does kind of make sense just because teams really do tend to, when they add a star, and need a year to really put it all together, and then the next year just go out there and play the best basketball they can possibly play. But I'm going to get into some other free agents that I'd like to see the Pistons take a look at. The first one is going to be DeMarre Carroll, who I think is a top 5 free agent in this offseason just because of what he did in the playoffs. He showed his worth. But I read something on Twitter today, and it may just be some person ranting, or it may be something true. And I'm hearing DeMarre Carroll wants $50 million. And I'm sorry, but no way am I paying DeMarre Carroll $50 million. In my opinion, I was thinking 3 years, $21 million, maybe $24 million. He hasn't done it for 3-4 years at an all-star level. He's done it for 1. And you just got to see a more consistent stretch of years for you to be worth so much more money. But if the Pistons can persuade Carroll to come here, I'd say maximum $30 million. If the Pistons can persuade him to come here, it's a great pickup, and it's going to make our defense so much better. Another guy I look at is Jay Crowder, defensive star. He's been able to defend some of the best. He is very small for the small forward position at 6'5", but he gets the job done somehow. I really like him. He's a savvy player. He doesn't bring much on the offensive end, but if you have Reggie and KCP, Brandon, I think you have enough offense to where he doesn't need to put up more than 8 to 10 a night. Also, Brandon Wright as a backup center. Wright is, I think he's just kind of floundered around the league for the past few years, and I have no idea why. I mean, this guy is very intimidating. He's 6'10", 6'11". He's super strong. He looks ripped. I don't know how he's not on a team starting or playing a lot of minutes off the bench. He takes high percentage shot, and he rebounds at an amazing rate. He's just such a well-rounded player for a big man. I think Detroit should look at him for maybe 3 years, $5 million a year. So 3 years, $15 million.
Yeah, that would be a steal. I actually, I was looking over my list and I realized that as soon as you said that, I was like, I totally skipped him. I got too hyped to talk about Kevin Love for a minute, but yeah, Brandon Wright is a perfect fit for us. He's a rim protector, a rebounder, like you said. Yeah, he scores efficiently. He's not a guy who needs the ball to make plays, and I think he's just a perfect. He's a great pick and roll guy as well. So I would love to see us target him. As far as DeMarre Carroll, yeah, 4 years, $50 million. I'm not giving him that. But I think that's around the price tag, if not more, for Draymond Green. And I'm debating. I'm going back and forth in my head if that's worth it. Jay Crowder, I like. Yeah, he's a good defensive guy. But I just think that ultimately, I think we need to focus on the 4 and the 5 because I really think that we're going to end up going with a 3 in our draft. But yeah, I think we're going to go with one of them at 8, and then we'll target maybe a DeMarre Carroll in free agency. But yeah, I'm really trying to think of some like under the radar threes that we can get because we do need a backup or starter if these guys end up don't starting. Kyle Singler is a free agent, but we can't get him because of the McDyess rule. If you guys don't know, it's actually because of Antonio McDyess when we traded him to Denver for Allen Iverson. When you trade a player, you cannot get him back for a year from that date you traded him. So we wouldn't be able to sign Kyle Singler until like February if he was a free agent. When we traded him to Denver for Allen Iverson. I mean, I really don't know of any 3-point shooters that are really on the market as threes, some 3 and D guys. Do you? We wouldn't be able.
One guy that comes to mind is Matt Barnes from the Clippers. He's going to be a free agent. He's not a major weapon offensively, but can hit the 3 and is a savvy defensive player. He'll get you some technicals, and yeah, I mean, that's all I can really say about him. I'm not a big fan of him, but if he can come to Detroit and get the job done, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of him, but that's just someone that crosses my mind. I've never really liked him because he always seems to get into trouble. But if he's going to make this team, if he's going to help get this team into title contention, then I guess I want him on the team.
Right. And another guy who's on the market, but not really, is Kawhi Leonard. He would be a great fit if we could get him, but I don't know. He's staying quiet, so I don't really know if he wants to stay in San Antonio or leave. The Pistons could make things interesting.
Wantable than his offensive ability, just because he can defend LeBron, as you saw in the finals 2 years ago. He was so good, and everyone loves Kawhi Leonard just because he's such a good person. You can tell he doesn't show any mean side to him. He's so calm, he's collected, and he just does it all.
Yeah, I don't know though. I'm not so sure that San Antonio or how available he is. He's not saying he's staying in San Antonio, but he's not saying he's going anywhere. He's just a quiet demeanor guy, so no one really knows if he's available or not in terms of free agency. But Jimmy Butler's another guy that comes to mind too. I don't think he leaves Chicago, so realistically, I think we should draft a 3 just because I don't see many 3s available for us via free agency.
Mm-hmm. Right. There really aren't many that's going to that are going to be able to come in and contribute at a starter level right away. And that's going to bring us to another topic as to starters and who's going to start for the Pistons. As fans have really started to like the conversation of who is going to start. Is it going to be Reggie Jackson or Brandon Jennings or both of them? And then if we only start one of them, is Jennings going to get moved, or are we not going to sign Jackson, or is it going to be a sign and trade? There's so many different options we could do. What do you think we're going to be? What do you think we're going to do with that situation?
Well, what we're going to do and what I want is two totally different things. So I'll start with what I think we're going to do. I think we're going to keep Reggie Jackson, and we're gonna pay him his $12 million a year, 5 years, 60. Yeah, his 5 year, $60 million contract. I think that's a ballpark of what he's gonna get. But I don't want him. Actually, believe it or not, I'd much rather sign and trade him. I think we could get more than the value we lost, and I think we could get more than a Kyle Singler and DJ Augustine for Reggie Jackson back in a sign and trade from New York or wherever, because I believe Jennings is the guy for us. I mean, he just played so well last year. You might want to wait for a year because of Jennings' Achilles injury, so I get that it's kind of risky to invest in him as our point guard for the next 4 or 5 years just because of that Achilles injury. But I think that a fully healthy Jennings versus a fully healthy Jackson, I'll take fully healthy Jennings any day of the week.
Well, Chris, that's where I'm going to have to disagree with you. I really have liked Reggie Jackson. I've watched him ever since he came to Detroit, and I watched the budding friendship that has grown between him and our center, Andre Drummond. And I really like Jackson. I think he and Drummond have the chemistry that very few point guard and centers have in the NBA today. And I'm not saying that we need to go trade Jennings. I'd like to see him come off the bench in a six-man role, which I feel like he'd be able to do. Or maybe try a Jackson and Jennings lineup together and see how that works. But regarding Jennings, I've heard possible trade rumors about him going to New York. And one that I've actually recently heard is Brandon Jennings and the 8th pick to New York for Tim Hardaway Jr. and the 4th pick, which is Stan Van Gundy, who really likes Tim Hardaway Jr. and wants to bring him in, according to what I've heard. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. But at the end of the day, I think at the start of the 2015 year, it's going to be Jackson starting at the 1 and Jennings coming off the bench.
Yeah, I think that's certainly how it goes. I think that's certainly how it's going to go down. But I just hope we at least keep Jennings if we bring back Reggie Jackson. And yeah, he does have that chemistry with Drummond, but I don't know. I feel his offensive game has a long way to go, and I think his stats were pretty misleading over the last stretch of the season. He had over those 14 games he had. I think it was like he was averaging near like a triple double or something around there, and I just think that's misleading. I don't think he's really that great. They're the same age. Jennings had a 20 and 20 game last year, which was fantastic. I just think Jennings is the guy for us. I think he has great chemistry with Drummond and them as well. So I wouldn't be opposed to both of them staying, but if they stayed, if they both stayed, I would prefer to actually have Jennings start over Jackson. But you're not going to pay a guy $12 million a year to come off the bench. So I think he'll be our starter for the future, and hopefully I'm wrong.
Well, Chris, I'm going to put you on the spot. We actually have a question through our chat right now on our podcast, and one of our viewers is wondering, what does the loss of Greg Monroe mean for the Detroit Pistons? Because he's been such a big part of us throughout these last few years, and now we're not gonna have him. What do you think? What do you think all this means, and how do you think he's going to be replaced, and to what sort of impact?
Yeah, I think it's going to be. It depends really because of free agency. We couldn't have a guy like Paul Millsap and stuff, and that would diminish, if not replace, Greg Monroe. I like him a lot. I'm a huge fan of him. But I just think that I don't think the fit is bad, but I don't think it's great with Monroe and Drummond. And I just think that he's gone. I think he's tired of Detroit. I think he's gonna move on, and it certainly could be a huge loss, or it could be a huge gain, because it just really all depends on free agency and what we do with that money that we're presumably losing if he walks.
You know, Chris, Greg Monroe has been my favorite Detroit Piston since he was drafted here, and I'm very compelled to see Detroit maybe look to re-sign him and try out him and Drummond once again for a full year with Reggie, with KCP, and hopefully Stanley Johnson. I'm Even though I'd really like to see that, I just don't see Detroit doing that, and I do see Greg Monroe leaving to a team like New York or LA. But
okay, go ahead. Sorry.
But I do think we'll be able to fill the void that he leaves, whether it's through free agency or the draft, but most likely through free agency, as you've stated, just because the power forward pool in free agency is so much better than the draft pool.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you, because Greg Monroe was my favorite player since the minute we drafted him, and he still is up until this point. It's him and Jennings as my two favorite players on the Pistons. But yeah, it's gonna be sad to see him go, but I think he is gone, and I think we'll be able to recover, because I think Stan will be able to pull off some type of Paul Millsap, Kevin Love, something this summer. I think he's going to make some type of splash.
And the thing I really liked about Monroe was he was one of the very few traditional power forwards left in the NBA, just because his back to the basket game was so artistic. He had so many nice moves, and he worked in the paint, and he made the defender work. He was such a fun player to watch, and I'm really gonna miss that about him here in Detroit. And I'm definitely gonna watch him wherever he goes, and I'm always going to be a fan of him. And I think Pistons fans got on him a little too much, a little too early, just because he wasn't a very good defender, and everyone was worried about Andre Drummond fitting with Greg Monroe, when maybe it was Andre Drummond's fault that him and Greg Monroe weren't fitting together. Not trying to blame someone, because I don't really know whose fault it was. Or maybe they do fit together, and we just haven't seen enough of the right lineup Detroit wants to use. But
okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, I was just gonna say, that's the thing. Is like, I don't think they don't fit. I just think that it's not as perfect as a stretch four is, and that's what I think everybody is saying, is that, oh, we need a stretch four with Drummond. That would be a perfect fit. But Monroe is. I agree with you 100%. I love watching his game as a fellow big man. When I played basketball, I idolized his post game. His passing ability was really what stands out to me, especially in the low post. He's a great playmaker. So I definitely, if we keep him, I wouldn't mind it. I wouldn't be upset at all. But I think if it comes down to a Kevin Love, a Paul Millsap, or something, as opposed to Greg Monroe, I think we just got to take it, and it's going to be sad to see him go. And like you said, I'm going to follow. I too am going to follow him wherever he goes.
All right, Chris. We've been streaming for quite a while now, and we are down to our final topic of tonight, and it's going to be about next year. We're looking into the future, and Chris, what is your bold prediction or bold predictions for next year?
Okay, well, I made one just a few minutes ago when I said Stan is going to make a splash in free agency. I think you are going to see either Green, Millsap, or Kevin Love in a Pistons uniform this year. And I think, as far as another bold prediction, let's see. Another bold prediction. I'm going to go with sign and trade of Reggie Jackson. I think that
Wow.
I think that can happen. I'm not 100% sure that it will. And again, maybe this is just me hoping, because I'm a Jennings fan and I believe in Jennings more than I believe in Jackson. But I could see us doing a sign and trade with New York. Maybe, like you said, instead of Jennings in the eighth, we sign and trade Reggie Jackson for like Tim Hardaway and Tim Hardaway Jr. and Stan gets his guy. And remember, guys, Tim Hardaway Jr. or Tim Hardaway Sr. actually is one of the coaching staff members for Stan Van Gundy. He's head of player development for the guards. So I think that there's definitely a connection there, and I think it's a real possibility that we could sign and trade Reggie Jackson to New York for Tim Hardaway Jr.
You know, Chris, I'm really shocked at that second bold prediction. That is the definition of bold right there, because I don't think anyone thinks that Reggie Jackson is going to be in a sign and trade deal with the Pistons. But it's interesting because maybe that could be the most beneficial deal for them. Now, my bold prediction, and maybe this isn't that bold because Stan Van Gundy is such a good coach, but I'm going to say Stan Van Gundy wins Coach of the Year. And
Wow.
he's a fantastic coach. He's missed a playoff once in his career, and that's with this Detroit team last year, where he went through Josh Smith after 5-23, cutting your best player, cutting your highest paid player, not your best. It was actually one of our worst. But cutting your highest paid player midway through the season. Then you had to trade for a new point guard and retool your whole lineup. And you lost your starting point guard who was playing the best basketball of his career in about a 10-game span to an MCL tear. And through that, Detroit was still in the playoff race, and they were still playing competitive, fun basketball. And their fans grew and grew, and now Detroit's starting to get a lot of attention around them, and they should be expected to make the playoffs next year. And I eventually think they will.
Well, yeah, the only thing that I don't think your bold prediction is possible, and here's why. I agree with you that Stan Van Gundy is a deserving Coach of the Year candidate. He is a top 5 coach in this league. But if you look at who gets Coach of the Year, 9 times out of 10, it's one of the top 2 seeds in either conference. So I think that you really, the Pistons would really have to aim high and somehow get a top 3, 4 seed to Stan Van Gundy even be considered for Coach of the Year. But I think he's definitely a deserving candidate, and I think he is an elite coach. So I see where you're coming from, but to realistically win it, you have to be an elite team, and I just don't think we're there quite yet. But I agree with you. We're definitely a playoff team in a poor Eastern Conference. We should have made it this year, and I think we're primed to make it next year.
All right, Chris. Well, it's been a fun night here talking about the Pistons, but I think it's time for us to wrap it up here at Pistons Nation. Chris, I hope to hear back from you soon, and I hope to be on another podcast with you soon, because this was very fun and it was great. So, Chris, anything you want to say to end the show?
Not really, man. Other than this was fun doing it. I love doing podcasts, and I love talking about my hometown Pistons. So anytime you guys need me for a podcast, I will be available. Anytime.
All right, sounds good. And that's going to wrap it up from us here tonight at Pistons Nation. Thanks to everyone for listening, and as always, go Pistons.